Welcome back to Game Time Decision, and it is something non-NASCAR for the first time this year as F1 is getting ready to go once again, starting in Australia this weekend. But before we get into who we think is going to do well down under, we're going to start with our full championship predictions for this
Well,
season,
huh.
P20 to P1, see who we think is going to be Drivers' World Champion this season as the field looks one of the tightest we've seen in years as we get ready to start 2025 here. So I will be starting off with mine. I'm going to go from my P20 to P1, kind of explain my thoughts, and then we'll toss it over to Keegan to do his. And starting down in P20 for me is Gabriel Bortoleto of Sauber. And I think Bortoleto is a good driver. Obviously, F2 champion. This is a solid guy for sure. I'm not sure the Sauber is going to be anything more than a green trash can this year. It looks terrible. The paint scheme looks even worse than it did at the F175 reveal. So I think it's going to be a tough time for Sauber this season, and because of that, I have Nico Hulkenberg down in 19th. I think we would all agree Nico Hulkenberg is better than the 19th best driver in this field. However, I just don't think there's that much in the Sauber. I think they're really going to struggle this season. They're going to be putting all the resources towards Audi in 2026. P18, I have Jack Doohan. I know a lot of people think that Doohan might not make it through the full season with Alpine because of the Franco Colapinto situation. I think Doohan at least does enough to get a full season. So I'm going to have him staying in P18 here. I don't think he'll be anything incredible, but he will keep a seat. P17, I have Lance Stroll. I think Aston Martin is awful this year. I think Aston Martin will be the second or third worst car this season. They just got in Adrian Newey. He hasn't really had time to make any changes. That team fell off a cliff at the end of last season. I think Aston's really going to struggle this year. So Stroll down to P17 behind Isaac Hadjar, and I think that might be a bit of an unpopular opinion there, Hadjar over Stroll immediately as a rookie, but I like Hadjar. He's a feisty driver, has good pace, reminds me of Yuki Tsunoda as a rookie a little bit. I think he's going to be very solid, not quite up to Tsunoda's level. I just don't think RB is going to be that good this season. P15, Fernando Alonso. This is less about Alonso and more about Aston Martin. Like I said, I think they're awful this year, and even though Alonso is an incredible driver in his own right, you got to think with the top four teams all being so far ahead, that's P1 to P8. So any available points without any DNFs are P9 and 10. So I just don't think Aston's going to be good enough to get those points very often. Alonso down in P15, right behind Yuki Tsunoda. So a bit of a checkerboard of the RB and Aston Martin guys there. I think Tsunoda had an impressive season last year. Still a little surprised he didn't end up with that Red Bull seat. Maybe Red Bull worried about him going to Aston in the future when Honda moves to Aston Martin as well, maybe keeping him down in the junior team for that reason. P13, I have Oliver Behrman. We saw what he can do as a reserve driver last year for both Ferrari and Haas. This is a very, very good driver. I think going up against some of these other midfield or lower pack teammates, I would have had him as top of his own team, even in his first full season, but I don't think he's quite good enough to beat Esteban Ocon over a full season at this point. P12, I have Alex Albon. I was really impressed with Williams during testing this season. They look very solid. I know you can't always take a ton from testing, but if I think Aston Martin and RB and Sauber are all going to be terrible, that kind of by default puts a Williams and Haas up here. So I'm going to have Albon in P12. P11 is Esteban Ocon. I think that 11, 12, 13 is right where Haas is going to be for much of this season, and Esteban's a great driver. We saw it last year between him and Gasly. Whenever they had equal cars, they pretty much had equal drives for a lot of that season. I was very impressed with him. And then speaking of Pierre Gasly, he is in P10. I think that Alpine is going to be at least decent this year, and we know what Gasly can get out of a decent midfield car. We saw it in 2021, his amazing season with AlphaTauri where he picked up the win. I think you see shades of that Pierre Gasly this season. He finishes P10 in the drivers. And then my best of the rest is Carlos Sainz in 9th. This is just too good of a driver to be in a Williams, let's be honest. He is an incredible driver in his own right, and I think he's going to drag this Williams to places it maybe shouldn't be. So P9, I have him there. I would be really impressed with Williams if they stay there, but I think they've looked solid, so we'll see what happens. Now into the big teams. P8 is Liam Lawson for me. I think the Red Bull this year is going to be the third best car on pure pace. I think it is the third best car, and I am not overly sold on Liam Lawson's ability to be consistent. And then we also know what the reputation is with the second Red Bull car, where your driver really struggles a lot of the time. So I have him down in P8. P7 is Kimi Antonelli. I think Kimi Antonelli surprises some people this year. I think he could even win a race. I think this is a guy you see get on multiple podiums. I think he's not going to be too far off from George Russell. This is a guy who's either going to be incredibly fast or put it in the wall. And for a rookie, I think that's something you can tolerate because that speed is there. So I still have him P7 right behind his teammate George Russell in P6. I think this is about where Mercedes is going to be. I know they had a great testing, but still, the working window for this car has been so small over the past 2 or 3 years, I can't put them any higher than this. P5, I have Oscar Piastri. I think the McLaren is going to be the best car this season, but I think it's so close that the driver's still going to be able to make the difference, and Piastri still has a bit of struggles with his tire management, stuff like that, so I think he is going to come home P5. P4, I have Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. I think Ferrari is the best teammate combination on the grid right now with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, and I think this comes down to Leclerc being more familiar with this Ferrari team and the car than Lewis. I think Leclerc might get out to a good head start on Lewis. I think once you hit about the 1/3 mark of the season, you're going to see Lewis start to close that down. Although I do think Leclerc does enough to stay just ahead of Hamilton over the full season. So I have Leclerc just ahead of him in P3 on the podium of the Drivers' Championship. Then the top two, I think we all kind of knew who they were going to be coming into this video. But number 2 for me is Lando Norris. I think McLaren is the best car for sure, but we've seen there's some operational errors and strategy errors with this McLaren team. I'm not totally sold that they know how to run and win at the front over a full season yet, and Lando Norris still has off days sometimes. He's proven he can go out and win from the front when he needs to, but I'm still not overly sold on his ability to take a car that maybe isn't working to his liking, maybe is a 5th or 6th place car, and take it up to the podium, take it up to P1 or P2. So I still have him in P2 for now, and that's less about Lando Norris' skill and more about the skill of the guy who I have as world champion in 2025, Max Verstappen. This guy's bulletproof. He will run you and himself off the road to win the world title. We've seen that last year. We've seen it with Lewis Hamilton. And I think, let's be honest, Lando Norris is more easily scared off the road than Lewis Hamilton. And Max Verstappen is just the best driver in the sport. Relentless consistency, and we've seen last year, look at Singapore. That car had no right to score points on the pure pace of the car, and Max drove it to 2nd place. Just absolutely absurd talent. This is the best driver in the field at maximizing what is not a great car, and I can't pick against this guy until someone beats him across a full season. So Max Verstappen is going to be my 2025 world champion. Now, Keegan, let's hear what you have to say heading into this year. I am very curious to see where you have these guys.
That's smiling. I like that, by the way. But we have a lot of parallels. We have a few differences. I'm just gonna quickly run through the ones at the back because they're back there for a lot of the same reasons you have. I have Bortoleto last. I think Sauer's gonna be pretty bad as well, and I don't think I have had Jar. I don't know. I haven't seen obviously I haven't seen a lot. He's a rookie. But I don't think he's gonna be able to outdrive. I don't think that's gonna be a team that's gonna be up there a lot either. I have Duan in 18th. And right above him, you notice I haven't said Hulkenberg yet. You have just Sauber being that bad. I think Hulkenberg outdrives this car a little bit and just becomes, or not becomes, I guess he already is a little bit, the Michael McDowell of F1, or Ryan Newman, sorry, of F1, just not let anybody buy him. Like, if he qualifies well enough, you're not going to pass him. He's just going to make his car the width of the racetrack, and you're not going to get past him. And I think that's enough to get him, 2 spots above where you have him. I have Pierre Gasly in 16th. I would love to see sign of the Gasly we saw at the end of the year last year. I just don't think the Alpine's going to be that great. I have Ocon in 15th. I think Haas is kind of going to be where they were last year as far as team rankings. I don't see them making a huge, giant leap. And I just think that his teammate, that I'll get to later, will outdrive the car a little bit. I have Lance Stroll in 14th. I think the Aston Martin will be better than what you think, and better than, Haas and Alpine and some of those other teams. But it's Lance Stroll, so I have him in 14th. I do have Behrman in 13th. I think Behrman is just one of those generational talents, and he's going to be with the team soon enough, whether it's Cadillac, Ferrari, wherever he might end up. I do think he'll be there soon. You just need the seat to open for him. So I have him in 13th. I have Albon in 12th. I like what I've seen out of him out of recent, better than his teammate. I have Tsunoda in 11th. I know a lot of people wanted him to get that Red Bull seat. I'm okay that he didn't. And I have him at 11th. I have Antonelli in 10th, a guy you spoke very highly of. Probably the guy I'm most excited to watch this year as far as rookies go. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. Still a rookie. Mercedes is as a young core, and you saw that kind of with McLaren when Norris and Piastri were there and they were young. They sometimes having two young drivers is a lot for a team. I do think he surprises a lot of people. I have him 10th, which is good. I just think the Mercedes is kind of going to be where it was last year. And Russell obviously is probably going to outperform him and win a few races this year. I have Alonso in 8th. It's Alonso. It's that's the guy who's it's hard to put him down. So I just have him there. Oh, sorry. I skipped Liam Lawson. I have Liam Lawson in 9th. The Red Bull is going to be the Red Bull. Max is going to outperform his teammate by a lot. The Red Bull is probably going to be worse than, the Ferrari, McLaren for sure. And maybe Mercedes, depending on what part of the year we're in. So I've Lawson in 9th. Alonso, I already mentioned. It's hard to bet on Alonso to finish low. Carlos Sainz. Williams shocked a lot of people on testing. I'm not a guy who really cares about testing at all, whether it's NASCAR, F1, anything, spring training. I don't take any stock into that. But Sainz, this is more of like a hope. I really hope he drags this team and way out drives this car. I hope so. I really, really hope so because, yeah, I just hope so. And Williams, they did look fast in testing. So if you do count that, which I guess I did a little bit here because I'm 7th, but I do think he'll do well enough to just finish 7th. I have George Russell 6th. I just think that's the guys above him are Max Verstappen in the gang and the teams that I think will have the best car. So I have George Russell 6th. I have Leclerc at 5th. I think his teammate outperforms him this year, which isn't a super hot take, with it being Lewis Hamilton. But I also have Piastri above him. I have Piastri at 4 from McLaren. I don't think this is Piastri over Leclerc. I think this is McLaren over Ferrari. I think McLaren has the best car from start to finish of the year. I don't think there's a race where they show up without the best car. I'm not saying they win every race, but I don't think there's going to be a period where they don't have the best car. And I think their car is going to be a good margin above Ferrari and obviously fair. Red Bull. So that's why I have Piastri over Leclerc. Then I have Hamilton. I just think Hamilton, I know it's a new team. There's going to be a little bit of adjustment period, but I'm kind of banking on, look at 3 races in the rain. That's 3 wins, dog. I'm okay with that. And
that's actually a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm putting him 3rd because I'm banking on 3 races in the rain. All right.
It might even rain this weekend.
Exactly. Here's my top 2. I have Max Verstappen 2nd. For the same reasons I have Piastri over Leclerc. I think McLaren is going to be so dominant. And I think the frustration, I think Lando's going to get out to a lead. I think that's what's going to happen. And the frustration will set in on Max, and he'll make more mistakes just trying to kind of force opportunities, if you will. And I think that kind of bites him in the end.
Well, I'm very curious to see what happens here. I know you have Lando Norris at the top. I have Max at the top. It's going to be a great fight the entire season for sure. But it starts this coming weekend in Australia, back in Melbourne. I am very much looking forward to this race. F1's been gone too long, and people are saying it might rain. And I know people say that all the time, and then it doesn't rain. But if it does, that would be an incredible way to start the season, a rain race with 6 rookies in the field. Wow.
It would change my podium picks.
Yeah, a lot could potentially happen, but we've made the podium picks under the assumption the race will still be dry. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my 3rd place, and that is Oscar Piastri. Like you mentioned, the McLaren, I think, is definitely going to start the year as the best car. They're going to be great. So who do you have in 3rd?
Piastri as well. Same reasons, that orange car.
So then 2nd place for me is going to be Max Verstappen. I think that the Red Bull isn't necessarily going to love Melbourne. We've seen it not be incredible here compared to as dominant as it has been in other places recently. So I think as they struggle a little bit to find their footing, this isn't going to be one of their happy hunting grounds for sure. I have Max coming home in 2nd place.
I know I just said Lando's going to get to an early lead. but I have Lando finishing second, which means I have Max finishing first in this race. I think Max wins this race, and in the next like 2 races, within the next 4 races, Lando kind of gets a lead over him and holds it for a little bit. I just think it's just a Max Verstappen thing to do to win the first race. I mean, he's gonna show up and try to win more so than like, I don't know, your typical midseason race last year. So I think he's really gonna try to win this race, and I think he gets it done because it's Max Verstappen.
Well, we'll see what happens. I've gone with Lando Norris winning, so I do think it's funny that I've picked Max to win the championship, you've picked Lando to win the championship, and we've inverted it for the first race. Like, that makes any sense. But I think Lando's going to get off to a strong start here. I think, like I said, my concerns are less about Lando's ability to deliver one performance as they are for a full season and McLaren's operational ability. So I think you come out at the start of the season, Lando's going to have the good vibes that McLaren was looking great in testing. Both drivers felt comfortable with that car, it seems. So I think they get off on the right foot. I think McLaren opens the year with a double podium and a win down in Australia. But also, one little bit of F1 news. You mentioned it briefly when talking about Oliver Behrman. Cadillac confirmed for 2026. So I am super excited for that. Yeah, so I know you mentioned Oliver Behrman. I doubt he moves to Cadillac. I think Ferrari has too much of a beat on him. I think they're saving him until Lewis Hamilton retires. But the name to watch for me is Colton Herta, the IndyCar star for Andretti. I think he could easily find his way into F1 with Cadillac because you know they want to bring in an American driver. And since Logan Sargent did not pan out, it looks like they're going to be taking someone from IndyCar, and I think that's the guy to watch.
My guy to watch is Carlos Sainz, just because he's not going to be sitting in a Williams long. I know there's some talks about Audi when that happens and him going there. If that doesn't happen, I mean, if he doesn't go to Audi, then I think it's pretty much a done deal that he's going to Cadillac. He's not just going to sit trying to bounce between, go back to Haas or like RB or any of those teams. Like he's gonna go to a team player, and we don't know if Cadillac or Audi will be team players, but you don't know. They could be. Yeah. So I think if he doesn't go to Audi, right? I think if he doesn't go to Audi, he pretty much is a done deal going to Cadillac. But yeah, I think that's all we got this week, right?
Yep, that is it for our first F1 episode of the season. If you want to check out the NASCAR stuff, that'll be out on the channel as well. Picks vid for Las Vegas will be coming later this week. If you want to check out our Phoenix recap for NASCAR, that was earlier this week. But that's our first F1 episode of the season. I am excited for Melbourne. I'd love a little rain, maybe see a Hamilton Masterclass, race 1 with Ferrari. That would be insane.
That'll be fun.
I would love to see that for sure. Yeah.
Get the front.
Yeah, we will see you guys next week again on GTD with the recap for your first race in F1 of 2025.